Right, everyone knows this old trick. You give whatever you need to dismantle a little tap. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, go. Nothing. And another. Nothing. What's going on here? Come on. Fine, okay, I'll try something else. I know this will work. Right. Have some of that. And that. What's going on? Nothing. Oh, for goodness sake. Fine, I'll have to do it the old-fashioned way. Ugh. Hi guys, it's Lou from the Barbican Broadcast. Hope you all are having a wonderful day. So what have we got on the chopping board? So this is the chainsaw, which you might have seen. I keep saying chainsaw, which you might have seen from the previous videos. So what I've done is I've taken out the housing. I'm going to be cutting down the blade, so to speak, a little bit, just so that it isn't so long, because it does look a bit derpy. But what I want to do is put it back inside the housing in which it came with, but to give it space, so that 2 blades can go in there, and that will be the main melee weapon for the Giga-Gargant. Of course, I have to pay homage to Bill Making Stuff, as he was the one that inspired me to start drawing my ideas before I build them, and it's really, really helpful. I am terrible at drawing, but it is a really nice way of getting your ideas out there and testing a few of them, actually. So what are we actually working with? Well, it's a very cheap Halloween weapon of war. So it took a lot of clean up. So I had to go with a very sharp scalpel to get rid of all the mold lines, and I didn't really like the profile of the teeth, so I cut into them a little bit just to give them a bit more of an edge. But again, like with all things when you're doing trash building, it can sometimes feel 1 step forward and 2 steps back. So it left me with these holes which I needed to then fill. So I had a few ideas up my sleeves. The first one was probably the worst one, which was to use extremely thin EVA foam. So what I did was I gave it a good sand to make sure that the super glue would be able to adhere to the plastic, and then I cut out a load of thin strips of EVA foam, and then I added it to the teeth. This was incredibly fiddly. I did get my fingers stuck to each other 1,000 times, but I eventually did finish it. It took about 20 minutes. It was absolutely fine. I was watching Stranger Things Season 3, so it was absolutely fine while this was all going on. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Looking back, I should have gone with my second idea. I even had to borrow my wife's electric nail file just to help me tidy it all up in the shortest time as possible. It did work, though. It is an amazing bit of kit. If you can get one, they're super cheap and they're just really good for trash building. I've probably used it more on trash building than my wife has ever used it on her nails. I even used it to help me with the mold lines on the second chainsaw. So to give myself a bit of a break from having to worry about the teeth, I went and did some riveting, which is my favorite part. It's so therapeutic. I would say though, using super glue isn't always the best. So if you are using super glue, a well ventilated room is an absolute must, as you do go through a hell of a lot of super glue. Right, but these rivets were absolutely tiny. They're the 1.5mm, I believe. You can get hundreds for about £1.50 from a number of accessory stores here in the UK, which is really, really nice. So my next idea for the other chainsaw was epoxy putty. Now, this I bought years ago, so it's not in the best state. It's a little bit dry. In hindsight, a few dabs of water just to help would have been really useful, but then again, it would have taken a lot longer for it to have dried. It wouldn't have been a day project to start this at the very least. So I had to take that in consideration. So this was incredibly fiddly, probably more so than when I used the EVA foam, but the result was a lot better. So here I am taking the time I needed to get the job done. So whilst that was drying, I took the opportunity to do a bit of plating. I always say armoured plating, it sounds a bit better, but what we're doing here is cutting cardstock, which is a really nice way of saying cereal box cardboard. And I normally randomly cut them into strips. It is an ORK project, it doesn't need to be perfect, which is perfect for me. So what I do is I actually do quite a lot of bending of the cardboard so it has a bit more flexibility. And this is a technique which I've honed after many, many years. And it's simply you glue cardboard to plastic and then you glue more cardboard on top of that. But it does look nice at the end result anyway. So what I did here was just slapped on a load of the plating. It in super randomly. It's got to be random if it's got to be ORK. But what is an ORK project without even more rivets? So here comes my favorite technique of all time, which is the 1.5mm hole punch, which has seen better days. I think I've actually worn through the handles for this. So all you got to do is go from the top of the cardboard, which takes a lot more paint. Obviously, the plasticized stuff on the other side, plasticized plastic, whatever it's called, that doesn't take the paint so well. So you want to make sure that the inside of the cardboard box is what you have facing outwards, so that way the paint does not chip off so easily. And it goes on super quick. You put some PVA glue down and it works an absolute treat, and actually dries relatively quickly as well. So that is one side down. What it led me to next was, how am I going to make it look like it's powered? So for me, having the chain on the inside, two of those change, and I think I'll have a dividing strip of EVA foam on the roller. And then I've just got some cogs and some bits and bobs from broken printers and all sorts. And I thought I would just make this a little bit nicer using some absolutely dirt cheap adhesive diamonds that you can get from any pound land in the country. So they are super easy to find and just they look the part on any project that has anything to do with orcs. So go out and find some. So what I wanted to do after the epoxy putty had dried was to sand it down to hopefully try to give those teeth a bit of an edge, and I think it worked. It certainly worked better, a lot better than the EVA foam, so I'm going to definitely bear that in mind for future. And as you can see, I have gone to the effort of putting plating on the inside of the saws, which you might be able to see, might not. I'm not quite sure how it's going to look when it's all done and dusted. But for me, I just love the idea that it's going to look neat no matter what. There's going to be no bare spaces as much as possible at the very least. And it will just look like a better finished article. So there we are. We're about 50% done with the huge, whopping, great big chainsaw. I would love if someone could come up with a cool name for it. I was thinking Squig Slayer or something silly like that. But do let me know. But there we go for episode 5. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Hope to see you next time.